chase the rewards. Nowadays I feel rewarded by the chase. Funny how that works. Guess I had it backwards. A lesson to be learned in everything I'm striving after. Back when I would want it faster. Shifted into second gear. Had to make the message clear. Did it on my own. Blood, sweat, and tears. Never fear. Y'all was never here. You was just some jealous peers. Always in the game. Playing Snake like Metal Gear. I could polish off and never clear. Top it off with 7 beers. Still don't trust nobody else to ever steer. I'm the only person that would never veer. Hopped in a van. Watch it go. Van Gogh. How they lend an ear. How many can we fit up in the bandwagon? Funny how the ones stood me up, can't stand it. Numbers going up, my cell at the Grand Canyon. Loving how I climbed to the top, Van Damned it. Whoa, yeah. Shout out to the new ones. Whoa, yeah. Shout out to the day ones. Whoa, yeah. Shout out to the real ones. Whoa, yeah. Shout out to the fake ones. I learn a lot from my enemies, so I keep them close. They show me what I shouldn't do, so I'm keeping notes. One thing I'm noticing, a common thread between the foes. Money over morals, it seems that's where the evil grows. Don't get me wrong, go get the money, you need a home. But when it's all you think about, you predisposed to a life where you trying to make the deepest hole. Keep on getting farther, but the light never seems to show. Thought the seeds will grow, but it decomposes. In the red, getting split like the sea and Moses. Greed is hopeless, we learned it from the Greek and Romans. Feed the homeless and reach atonement, cause it ain't about the money, ain't about the moolah.
Down. Hey, delay my satisfaction, manifest versus action. I'm barely scratching the surface, cause what you know just a fraction. They trying to disturb my peace like I got an Atlanta accent. Say money's the root of evil, but tell me what's evil backwards. Yeah, tell me what's evil backwards. Sometimes change the perspective or give you a different action. I told you boys that I do it, you simply watching it happen. The base is low that I'm bad and I'm driving slow in the fast one. I'm praying to the Almighty Jehovah Jireh that one. Gotta keep my composure. People say anything behind closed doors for exposure. Sometimes seeking closure can open up a can of worms. With all the dirt I'm doing, swear they probably just gonna keep on growing. Don't listen to Connor when he says it's not about the money. Cause let's be real, you know he got a lot of money. But I get it, it's not the end goal. It's really just the asset, a vehicle to get to where you didn't go and get to where you get to grow. And money will magnify what you been know. So if you lame and get rich, you gon' be, man, you get it, bro. Do this for the click, if I'm going and they coming too. You might throw up at the budgets that I'm running through. I used to chase the money till I realized it was running from me. Now scratch that, I made a plan, now I'm the one that is running too. Fast track to that is doing what you love to do. 100x the investment in myself when y'all lost faith, I knew that it was coming through. The difference is you did it for the cash and I did it cause I wanted to. Though it's not about the money, it ain't about the moolah. Even though it came, praise hallelujah. Saying that I changed, I probably never knew ya.
Stop believing when my mom stopped breathing. Watch my cousin get locked after 4 cops beat him. Hit the gas, I just can't stop speeding. Someone tell these bops, I do not need them. I miss my daughter, man, this road got me sick. I'm in a cheap hotel, I'm buying more bricks. 3-letter boys got me sweating in my sleep. Rolling up in the morning, white ashes on my sheets. Got a girl on Madeira, pussy tastes like a peach. Pushing weight, got my name buzzing all in these streets. The good die young and goddamn I'm great. Leave my name on the wall with a can of paint. New coupe, rest in peace, Lil Snoop. Slapping mellow blonde cherry, shit tastes like a fruit. I'm looking out my window, watching little kids shoot. What happened to the youth? They're crazy, crazy. Time's changing, thinking about life, mind racing. Trying not to get my life taken. The world's gone crazy, crazy, crazy. The world's gone crazy. Time's changing, thinking about life, mind racing. Trying not to get my life taken. The world's gone crazy, crazy, crazy. The world's gone crazy. Keep pushing, I sky, keep pushing. I just wanna live. Don't get your life tooken. Smiles from my enemies, I'm laughing. 150 grand stuffed in a dirty mattress. If I write your address on a box of matches, you'll be gone in the morning, call it magic. I don't fear death, but I'm scared of cancer. I was 19, fell in love with a dancer. Mind racing all this time that I'm facing. Time's changing, friends dying in cages. I used to ride dirty, but now I'm low-key. Cooking OG got me feeling so clean. New lack, rest in peace, pretty black. Slapping this is for hopping out, smelling like a back. I'm looking at the window, watching little kids die. I look up in the sky and that's why this world's so crazy. Time's changing. Thinking about life, mind racing.
What's up, everybody? Happy Monday. Yeah, new setup, dude. We're good. I gotta get stuff, but yeah, we're good. Still need a mic. If you guys have any recommendations, let me know. I don't want to pay $1,000 for a mic. I use a couple times a week, so try and find me. I hate to say you guys try and find me, but I'm also looking. If you know of anything that isn't crazy expensive, that's pretty solid, let me know. With all that said, dude, it's really nice to be set up. I've got a desk now. I went with an 80 by 80 L desk. Everything is great. I've got stuff on the walls. Got a massage chair in the corner over there. You guys can't see it. One of these days I'll do a panorama show you. I just got to put a couple more things on the wall and frame some stuff together. But yeah, nice to be back. Let's talk about market stuff. So, a couple big things, guys. The stock market, of course, the last 2 weeks that I've just not been able to stream really. Absolute dominant performance. Pretty crazy how we dropped 10% and recovered it and then broke all-time highs relatively fast. 14% gain if you caught that low. We've always been looking for something like this. I don't know if that means that this is the bottom. Personally, I think this is going to come back down just because we have some pretty clear divergences and pretty clear momentum divergences, pretty quick bounce. I mean, I don't know. As much as I want to say, like, if this was crypto, I'd say we're coming down or we need to consolidate for a longer period of time. Whether that mean consolidating, then moving up, or just coming straight down and reversing. But it is the stock market, man. It's been doing some crazy stuff. But just based on TA, this should come back down, should consolidate over a long time. Guys, the stock market's been absolutely dominant for the past 5 to 8 years. I mean, really since COVID. Just absolute domination. And of course, in the last couple years, just absolute crazy performance. We had a small little hiccup with the tariff stuff, but quickly recovered and pretty crazy. There's always a saying, the S&P is one of the best investments in the world. Can't go wrong investing in it, and time it continues to prove itself. Now, a couple things. A lot of people keep saying, oh, well, Bitcoin should go next, and why isn't Bitcoin catching up? And guys, I'll be honest with you, because Bitcoin's a volatile, not necessarily volatile, because S&P's clearly been volatile. Bitcoin's a very risk-on asset. I don't believe that we're ready yet. I also don't believe that Bitcoin has performed its full bear market correction. And let's look at a couple other things. I know that the S&P has broken highs, but the S&P continued to break highs as Bitcoin dropped 50%. So just because the S&P 500 is continuing higher does not necessarily mean that Bitcoin's going to follow. Yes, you can say they've ran somewhat in tandem, but not every move has been mimicked exactly the same. So, I wouldn't automatically assume because the S&P 500 is doing well, that means Bitcoin's going to do well. I would say if the S&P 500 drops, Bitcoin is definitely going to drop. What's up, Gerbildo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. What's up, dude? Curious to see if my ideas about the market still align with your ideas. Oh yeah, I did reply with what are your ideas? In the grand scheme, still looking to take out lows. I still think we're gonna hit 50K, and I'll go through that. Strong V-shaped cover, yeah, very, very strong. Do you believe the stock market is changing in the sense of it not being like it used to be? I mean, it changes every day. But yeah, I agree. Like, it's gotten a lot more volatile. Returns have been much, much better. And there are a couple of like long-term investing books that generally the last uptick, so really since COVID and really recent 2022, this has just been a straight line upwards, right? We haven't seen a big, long period of consolidation like we did in the 2000s and 2008. We've just been straight ripping higher. And it leads to the question, do we need a period where we put in a lot of sideways, right? Because you could say, oh, well, prior to 2000, we did something very similar. We saw a straight parabolic advance, corrected for 10 years, and then we now have another parabolic advance. And how long will this one last? It's tough to say. It's tough to say. I don't think anyone will know how long will last, but it's always something in the back of my mind. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 20, 30 years from now, will it matter? Probably not. So that's why I always keep some sort of bag holding SPY, holding QQQ, right? Um, been very vocal about that on Twitter when I bought during the Trump tariffs, and then we bought again a couple weeks ago on this drop. I had a little bit of cash still in a Fidelity account, and I was like, hey, I'm going to look to buy, and bought right in the red box. We dropped a little bit lower, but now we're higher. I'm very happy with it. I don't like the fact that we're making all-time highs in the S&P 500 in this economic and political conditions. Makes me think that something really bad is close to happening. So I really don't think it's that bad. If you do like a lot of variance analysis between and you can use ChatGPT, it's great tool for this. I think a lot of things are blown out of proportion. I think a lot of things, like, it's easy for a negative headline to get a lot of traction, right? Because people, like your brain, throughout hundreds of thousands of years of evolution, you're going to see risk and risk and negative more because it's scary, right? Because you need to be alerted from it. Like way back in the day, if you heard a noise, it freaks you out. You're like, what is that, right? Because it could be a predator trying to kill you. Same thing here. I think there are way too many negative headlines. And taken back from that, I know things are harder necessarily to pay for now. Like times are definitely more expensive, but marginally it's not by that much. Plus, with the advancement of technology, we could all say that life is a lot easier, especially with AI now and robotics. Melt up here would leave many on the sidelines. Yeah, and again, it's the S&P 500. If this thing doesn't, and think of like a 20-year outlook, if this thing doesn't continue higher, your investment doesn't matter. One of the things I tell people when they ask, like, what should I invest in? The S&P. Because there's a thing you can't lose. If this thing doesn't continue to go higher, your money and your investments don't matter because the U.S. is in a civil war or zombie apocalypse, or money just doesn't matter anymore. Some other, I guess, God-bearing event happened or apocalyptic event happened. So, either you make money or your money doesn't matter anymore, and you're better off having bullets and guns. All right, let's keep moving. So awesome. Short term, I think we come down some again. I know that was a lot just on the S&P, but even the monthly, man, look at the monthly. Like you have these massive divergences right now. Again, like maybe we, I don't want to say they're confirmed because they're not, but could we continue moving higher and, ignore that divergence? Absolutely. But just as it stands, I would be really careful with a lot of this stuff. Like I wouldn't buy I wouldn't put a major buy in the S&P 500 right now. If you're doing like a 401k or you just buy every week and it doesn't really matter, your average smooths out over time. But, if you're looking to throw a chunk of money somewhere, I probably wouldn't do the S&P 500 right now. It actually was great last month. This month I'd say no, you're kind of chasing the tail of the dragon on that. Let's look at the dollar. This one catches me, and I want you guys to remember this, like the exact kind of pattern we're in for the dollar. Actually, I'll leave this for now because originally we thought this was going to go higher. It ends up that it's consolidating and now it looks like a larger bear flag to continue lower, which is kind of shocking to me because we know that the narrative for Trump is he wants to increase the value of the dollar. However, we look at M2 and they continue to print money. So you're going to see the dollar continue to drop. Kind of contradictory by the current political regime. And just so that everyone knows before I get the people that hate on Trump, there hasn't been a sitting, whether it be president or politician, that's ever tried to change the way that M2 looks. So, as much as we want to point the finger and say, oh, this, that, they've continued to print money forever, and they will never stop until it all collapses, right? Until every single domino falls over. So You know, not surprised, but we were looking for that double bottom to continue higher. It looks like that double bottom's not going to play out, which is kind of interesting because now what does Bitcoin look like now that this confluence isn't there? I still don't believe that Bitcoin's bottomed. I know I'm going to get to that when I talk about Bitcoin, but guys, if this is your first time in the stream, we put a lot of different analysis together to make a conclusion. The S&P 500 is going up, the dollar is going down, which contradicts, me been saying Bitcoin should go down, but we could just be looking at a small bounce and small in the grand scheme of things. Look, Bitcoin can go up 30, 40, 50%, and that's still not, and at least for a long-term spot investor, that's not worth it because if it retraces it all, what was the point? All right, I'm gonna go into tether dominance. Yeah, okay, so this makes sense. Get a nice little double top here on the weekly, right? Nice little. I'll leave this for now, just in case anyone wants to reference it. So a while back we said if Bitcoin breaks out of 6.3%, we're looking at a bear market. If Bitcoin breaks below, 3.7, we're going to continue the bull market. Obviously, we are continuing that bear market, or I guess in the bear market, as we've been in a bear market for about 6 months now. I think almost 7 months. Nice little, I guess, downward move. Pretty much needed. I mean, we've been in a massive uptrend. And this is where I think a lot of people are going to get confused in this live stream if you were. Guys, just because this is bouncing, like this can go all the way down to here and we could still continue higher, right? So I don't want to get confused. Yes, I'm going to say in the short term, tether dominance does look short-term bearish, whereas Bitcoin weekly does look short-term bullish. We actually have a nice little double bottom here. Nice little breakout above the midpoint. Volume still sucks though, which makes me, when this retreated and closed, I really didn't think we'd open green this week, but we did. So yeah, things lining up for I guess a Bitcoin pump. But again, that doesn't mean that the bear market's over. That doesn't mean that this is a great time to buy spot. I'd argue a couple weeks ago it was okay, when you're sitting in the 60s. Yeah, it's okay. But I'm still looking for those macro signs of bear market exhaustion, and we've seen a couple, but not really that many. Like, I know there's going to be people that come in and be like, well, the monthly RSI, like, yes, you'd be right. This is technically a sign of one of the signs of a bottom, right? When you look at, I'm going to delete some of this so you guys don't get too distracted here. When you look at Bitcoin and its bear market bottoms, yes, when monthly RSI hits around the 40 level, you are looking at a bottom formation. But that doesn't necessarily mean the bottom is in. It does not necessarily mean that we aren't going to go lower, right? As we saw in 2022, we were at, what is the exact price point? We went below 40, right? We were sitting around 40, right below 40, around 29 to 30K, right? So at 18,000, we dropped all the way down to 15. We spent several months. I mean, how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We spent 7 months below this point, right? And now I know the next question is, well, when we hit that, yes, technically it's not a bad time to buy, but there were a monumental of other factors here, and one of them being a major capitulation event, which we saw when FTX crashed. We have not had a major capitulation, in my opinion. You start to look at the weekly, and let's do a little bit of comparison. Again, you had all of these reversal signs on the weekly. You had high volume at the bottom. We'll circle them. High volume at the bottom. You were going down. Prices going down as RSI and MACD were pushing higher. Again, divergence. You had a descending wedge reversal pattern. You had, obviously, we hit that almost minus 80% from top to bottom. For those of you that are new to the stream or haven't heard me say it before, Bitcoin generally drops around 80% in the bull market, or excuse me, bear market. Right now we're sitting around 50 something percent from top to current bottom. So we haven't hit that mark. I don't know. I'm just not sold yet. I mean, if we're looking straight at a trading perspective, right? Like we've pointed out some indications of a trade, and there's a dozen more, mind you. in my opinion, we're just kind of looking at this, right? Where you get a nice little bounce, very low volume here. Again, very, very low volume on this bounce before continuing to drop. Volume picking up once more on that drop once volume came in. And I know some of you guys have seen my tweets recently saying, look, when big volume comes in, we're going to drop. Well, yes, we bounced, from 33,000 all the way to 48. That's a huge, huge amount. It's almost 50%. But that's happened in the past, right? Right? That can happen again, right? We're up about, we went up from top to bottom so far 31%, or excuse me, bottom to top 31%. But, you're not seeing confident signs, right? You're not seeing at least trading indications. I don't have divergences here. I have extremely low volume as we're pushing higher. Yes, you could say there's a little bit of double bottom on the weekly, but let's take things into perspective real quick, right? And perspective meaning how far have we dropped? We haven't had a single bounce. Look, maybe you can consider this sideways movement a bounce. I really don't, because price just kind of sat still. That's consolidation. This is your first bounce of maybe 2 or 3 bounces that'll happen in this bear market. And we went down, 52, almost 53% without a single bounce. It would make perfect sense to have a bounce here. Everyone's, and I don't want to say everyone. There are people that are permanently bullish, obviously, but there are a lot of people who just became bearish when Bitcoin hit here, and they were putting, they changed their targets and they did all this. One thing I will say is I generally stay consistent, right? I'm not changing my targets all the time. I'm not, bending the knee to the market moving. Guys, this is perfectly normal market movement. If you're looking at this and it's not the weekly and it's the 15-minute, I would expect this to continue lower and at least see reversal signs before we push, before we even bottom to move higher, right? And maybe this is the bottom and we'll get those signs later, but I'd expect us to at least visit it, or at least expect us to create something on the weekly that looks like a trading sign, or at least a spot trading sign. Because again, for anyone thinking they missed the bottom, and even if you did, even let's say this is the bottom, right? We almost spent an entire year here, right? June all the way to, March 2020, right? June 22, March 2020. Spent a whole year. In grand scheme of things, before even things even took off further, you almost spent a year and a half in this area. This is an excellent place to buy. So, yes, do I think that do I truly believe we're going to go to like 30K? Probably not. I think 50K would be a good amount. I think 44 might be a bottom. 50K might be a bottom. I mean, hey, we might go to 56 and make that first sign of divergence, and I'll say, okay, it's very likely that a bottom is either in or getting very close. What will happen if there's a bear market in the stock market soon, or a big correction? The price goes down. I think that's an easy one. Trump wants the dollar lower, not higher. I thought that Trump wanted to increase the value of the dollar. Correct me if I'm wrong. Let's even do a chat GPT. Does Trump want to increase the value of the dollar? Short answer, often favored a weaker dollar, not a stronger one. Pushed for, repeatedly argued that a strong dollar hurts U.S. exports and manufacturing. So a weaker dollar makes U.S. goods cheaper abroad and helps reduce the trade deficit. Oh, interesting. But reduces the trade deficit, but doesn't that hurt citizens? Pretty crazy. Okay, so Trump wanting to devalue the dollar. My bad. Thanks for correcting me on that. But okay, let's look at a couple other things. I'm not going to stream too terribly long today. I got a couple other things I got to do, guys. We just bought the house and weather's nice, so I got to go outside and do some stuff while it's nice. But yeah, weekly we'll go over that. Answered the broad question: do I believe the bottom's in? Absolutely not. Are we close? Potentially. Potentially depends what the S&P 500 does, right? If the S&P 500 nukes 40% tomorrow, where do you think Bitcoin's going? As much as I want to say this weekly is a double bottom, man, this daily is just so ugly. right? This marked. Man, there's no volume here. None. Like when I mean volume, when you break out, like let's say this is resistance, right? This big red box is resistance. When you break out, like we are now, generally you see volume come in, right? Generally you see buy orders tick up, volume goes higher. Just like when you break down, right? You see high volume. We have not seen any of that, which leads me to believe that we're just consolidating in a bear flag and continue. Even if this thing goes up to like 80K, which we could, you can definitely consolidate like this, bounce around, hit all the way to 85K. Will that make me bullish? Absolutely not. Am I mad that I didn't buy? Absolutely not. Guys, we have a trading bot that's up 65% year to date. You can use it for free. Look at my pinned tweet. I mean, look, I know that there are people like, oh, well, even if you bought the bottom and sold the absolute tippy top, I am still outperforming. And it's like 99% less work. It's great. So, daily, I think it'd actually be good to do one of these. Create that divergence here. Again, volume sucks. MACD is what it is. I'm not a huge fan of MACD. I like the momentum candles more than anything. I really don't care for the moving averages as much, except when I'm going parabolic or seeing parabolic move. Let's take a look at the 4-hour. I haven't really looked at a lot of the hourly time frame just because things have been so boring. But this is kind of nice in here. You get a little kind of a double bottom. Nice little consolidation. Nice little movement. I don't know. It's kind of crazy that, and again, this leads me to believe that the bear market is still very active. The stock market had such a crazy upward drive, and Bitcoin really hasn't done shit. Like, okay, I know we've moved from 59 to 76, but guys, we're talking about a very volatile asset. We're talking about a very risky asset. We're talking about an asset that, a lot of people consider a 300% move not to be very much. So when we get a 20% move, I'm not as impressed. That doesn't look like the bottom. If you do an Alt-I, you'll basically flip the charts upside down. It might help with your analysis of trend as some sort of bias. I really don't have. I don't hold a bias. My thing is, like, I don't hold a bias. I don't have ego, guys. I want to buy Bitcoin. I have a bunch of money sitting in an account ready to buy spot. We just haven't hit the level that, one, risk reward makes sense to buy, and two, I have no indications on the weekly to buy. I have, obviously, we talked about the monthly RSI, but that's one indication of, let's say there's 10 to 20 indications. That's 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20. Right? That doesn't mean you buy. That it's still very low odds that that event's going to change and happen. Plus, again, that bear market generally sees about a year sitting at or near the bottom, just like we saw in, obviously, 2022, 2023. And we spent, consolidating under 10K. Really, February 18 to October 2020, almost 3 years consolidating in this kind of bear market. We were at 3K for almost an entire year. Okay, not an entire, half a year. And then revisited it. We were at 6K for a year's worth of time. 6K being the in between. That's important because generally speaking, if you dollar cost average this whole time period, your average is like $6,000-ish. Just be patient. Opportunities will arise at some point. Exactly. Chris, what's up, dude? How you doing? You're doing well. Look around at some alts real quick. I haven't opened up Ethereum, but even look at what the best part about getting on Twitter is seeing all the altcoin garbage, like alt season's coming. Like, guys, Bitcoin's not even responding well to the S&P 500. Season's coming. You're out of your mind. Ethereum looks like shit. This looks like a giant consolidation lower. Scary stuff. I've seen Tao had a really nice run for a little while and then dropped a lot. Someone asked for Solana. I'll just take a look. I mean, yeah, I'm not impressed by this. This is a downtrend consolidation, down consolidation. If this is truthfully a double bottom on the week, and that doesn't even look like a double bottom on the week. You look at like the daily, and you have this kind of like this. This right side is generally explosive. Really signals a so Bitcoin's the only one that's doing good. And look, I know there's like 30,000 altcoins or 30 million altcoins, literally 30 million or more. I know some altcoins are going to do great, but 99% of them aren't doing shit. DeFi taking a big hit, rave rugged, should hit sentiment. Yeah, I saw that. Oh, sideways. What's up, dude? Where would you start buying Sol? I would never buy Sol. The only thing I'm buying this, I guess, bear market is Bitcoin. I am not buying, maybe Ethereum. That's it. I'm not buying any of these alts. And again, I've given a dozen reasons why, but I'll be honest with you. At this point in my life, I want to buy what's most guaranteed, and I think Bitcoin could go up 200 to 300%. With the amount of money I'm putting in, I'm happy with that. 200 to 300% for doing minimal work. I'll pay 20% in taxes because it's long-term capital gains. That makes, and I'll make APY on top of that, like with Coinbase. Coinbase gives you like almost 5% for holding. So yeah, I'm not interested in altcoins. I think there's too much risk. I think there's way too many altcoins to be fair with you. Like, yeah, Sol could do well in the future, maybe Link, maybe Ethereum. But I want the things that are guaranteed. I don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have just taken my 200% on Bitcoin instead of trying to get my 10x on Digibyte, right? So just my opinion. Look, you can buy alts, you can do whatever you want with whatever money, but I'm really only focused on Bitcoin at the moment. Are there any projects that you follow like Tao was? Not really. Again, I'm not interested in alts really at all. There's 40 million of them. Actually, let's look up. $37 to 50 million total tokens. I am 0% interested in altcoins. They're all just going to compete for each other. A lot of them are scams. They're going to continue to drive people out of the market. It's very clear that big money is mostly interested in Bitcoin. Pretty much all big money is only Bitcoin. So again, I'm just not interested in altcoins. I feel like I don't need to really explain myself on that. Just out of curiosity, what do you think about MicroStrategy's plan for the future? Do you believe that they hit the nail right on the head? I mean, I think if they do well, we'll all look back and say they did well. I think if they fail, we'll all look back and say, like the only thing negative I'll say is they're just buying at weird times. Like if Michael Saylor's really as good of a trader, investor as he is, why wasn't he just doing all his buying during the bear market? Why was he buying, months ago, why was he buying Bitcoin in the 100Ks, in the 90s, why wouldn't you just wait for a bear market? Or instead of buying all throughout this, why weren't you just buying here? I know that's hindsight bias, I guess, but I feel like if you're a decent investor, a decent trader, you could pick up on the 4-year kind of cycle or pick up on the cues that Bitcoin has before it bottoms. So I don't know. I mean, I think he'll end up making money in the end, but he's kind of in a weird spot because aren't we below his average? Isn't his average like 78K? Like, here's the other thing. If he's good at what he does, he should be paying his investors out. Unless they have some kind of like time horizon. But any fund that I invest in, like I want to know what your yearly gains are, right? Like if I go and invest in a fencing company, I want to know that I'm getting, 15 to 20% per year, let's say, right? But I don't know. He thinks that there's going to be a super cycle. Yeah. Probably never. Because it's never happened and likely never will. Again, a lot of that stems from what's the S&P 500 going to do? Right, guys. I'm gonna call it there. It's been about 40 minutes. I got some stuff I got to do in the yard today. Nice to be back again. If you guys have any microphone recommendations, just DM me on Twitter. I'll check it out. Again, I'm trying not to spend like $1,000 on a mic that I use a couple times a week. So if you can find something that's really good, that sounds good, that's not bringing the bank, that'd be great. All that said, guys, hope you have a good rest of your day. Always remember to be patient, use risk management.